So we are live on YouTube with Gene Key Transits with Monifa. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I should probably bring up my information first before I just jump online like that. But I had an indicator that I was supposed to be on the 45. So I was like, it's the 45, 45 of the hour. So here I be. Yay, gate 30. So in quantum human design, that is the gate of passion. And in the gene keys, that is the shadow of desire, the gift of lightness, and the city of rapture. So yeah, so in the gene keys, there's can be several for each, not several, but about three or four, I don't know, four, I think, for each sign. Yeah, three or four for each sign. So yeah, so it depends on what degree it is as far as it gets the status of the number, right? Of the 64 numbers. 30 is this one of Aquarius. So we got to be a little bit different. It's full moon. So that means you got to be extra. And then And then in the Aquarius area, it means that you have to be different, right? Um, but seriously, folks, yeah, I mean, it's intense energy. I don't know if y'all have been feeling it. I feel like some people have been feeling it just as density and just kind of feeling extra stress. I think some people are just feeling it as a slightly confusion, like so much to focus on, so much to do, so much to get done, and not quite knowing where to put their focus. And I think all those things are happening. I think this time of day and age is really hard for that not to be happening. There's just so much to digest and to choose or not choose about what we're interacting with on a day-to-day basis on the global scale. And so it can feel like that pretty much all the time if we're not finding our places of peace and where we can just settle in, be silent, taking care of ourselves, that kind of a thing. So don't feel like you're the only one losing it because you aren't the only one. Yeah, so for me it's been feeling like a dense feeling. I Up until today, I would say it's more energized and then, but like not wanting to focus, which I think for me is a choice only because it's something I've had to work on so much of my how I'm focusing, what it takes me to focus, how can I focus without restriction or angst, right? Or like trying to rebel against like having to do things. So for me, like that pulling myself back to the focal point, myself pulling myself back to what is important and what's important to me in this now moment has become a practice of mine and something that I share in vocal alchemy as well. So it's just it's just a process of being able to do that. Now, the shadow of desire is that feeling of desire of I want to do this and like that idea of satiating desires. This is very much that. It's not necessarily all about sex, although obviously sex is can be high on the desire meter, or we notice it's noticeably absent if it's not on the desire meter, right? Like we'll talk a little bit more about that, how it can be scary on either side of that, indulging a desire or repressing that. And then the gift of lightness, what it takes for us to move beyond. And I wish it wasn't moving beyond, but it's not really, it's basically dealing with desire. And then the city of rapture, which is always that highest extent that if I feel it as everybody involved in the experiencing of the frequency. I think of the key as the frequency. So it's a pretty cool key. It is Aquarius, so it thinks it's cool. Sorry, I'm a little weird today. And then the amino acid, more than usual. The amino acid is glutamine. the ring, the codon ring. So all of the keys are assigned to a codon ring in the actual DNA strand expression. That amino acid of that DNA is glutamine, and then the ring is of purification. So it is that aspect. Oh, and in the I Ching, it is fire over fire. So we got a double this time. So double is also considered, I'm not going to get this right because there's a different one that actually delineates when the quarters are over, like summer, fall, winter. But this is, they're important. They're all of those kind of hallmarks of when the element repeats in the I Ching, then it becomes like kind of quintessential, right? And my mind goes so many places when I think of certain things. And so, yeah, so ultimate fire maybe is another way of thinking of it. And so it's this idea of clinging fire is an old traditional, not old, but the traditional way of speaking to it in the information from Richard Rudd, who created the Gene Keys. And in my I Ching book, which is Venerable Wen's I Ching, um, hers, it's clinging. It's oops, I lost the word. What is it? Nope, that's not it. The spark, the spark. So we'll get into this because, and you get into Karen Curry Parker's information, it's gonna, I mean, even with the Gene Keys, it's gonna start evolving on us because it's what we think it is isn't necessarily all that it is type of feeling. So when you get into the Gene Keys, where does it come from? How does this evolve into what it is right now? What we are dealing with in the aspects of desire is genetic hunger. Like, so each of the keys also has a correlation to the body as far as what part of the body or body systems it's a part of. So it could actually be an organ, that kind of thing. Um, but this one is equated to digestion. So yeah, the digestive fires, if you have ever heard of that in Vedic, is it Vedic information, Ayurveda is what I was thinking of. Um, and so it is kind of this, like once you, and there's another key that Richard talks about eating and the feeling of satiation and how it disappears as soon as you've gotten full, from then on, it's just a lessening of satiation. And there's a factor of overeating that comes from that fear of never being satiated and then always trying to be satiated, right? So it's just like an aspect of being human that like being with or being without or both can kind of like double-edged swords for the human experience. And so the essence of where that comes from and why would we put that in our DNA code? Whose idea was that anyways? Is for the hunger of experience. So that's like the essence of what desire is about. And of course, sake, that's what we are here for is the experience. And so if we don't have a desire or something's not pulling us towards experiencing more, we just get self-satisfied and stay in our cubes, right? And it's increasingly becoming even more easy to do that. And there's kind of those dystopia futures that talk about like us all being tied to our computers and like plugged in electronically and just watching a screen and living in virtual realities. And I guess it's possible if we consider those virtual realities to be the actual experience. But I think, in my viewpoint, that there's always going to be this call for like life happening for real in our actual physical bodies, because that's what we came here for. But, some people would disagree. But that is the point. The point is that you can only go so far of escaping the desire for experience. and escaping your desires is not really a thing. We have learned that in some of the religious contexts, and how it starts to shift the mind and how it becomes distortions and can even become things that prey on others, right? So it's not a good thing to repress our desire. We've learned that from trying to, right? Um, yeah, so it's all this experience of how um, at this heart of any shadow in the gene keys, we're talking about some level of fear or desire to survive, right? Like, or this, I keep saying desire, it's on deck, right? But the wanting of to survive, right? You don't want to die, whether that is an egoic experience or a spiritual experience. And I think the egoic is tied to the body, which is why I discern between those two is what's really going on. So the fear that we will be consumed by our desires, destroyed by our desires, or be absent of our desires is what's at the heart of this shadow, right? So consumed is that we are just obsessed about it, and that we can't think beyond the thing or things that we want. Destroyed as you go out and do it, and it destroys your life, right? Because it's maybe not a desire that's functional in the current society, or may prey on others' abilities to fulfill their desires, right? um, and then the absence, where this is like most noticeable, like I said, in stuff like sex, right? Because you're like, oh my God, like I feel super mad. I don't want anything. Everything is dull. I have had this experience, right? And so that is a fear all of its own, because if you're not feeling a desire, if you don't want anything, are you really alive? That becomes the question to ourselves. We're like, are we really here? Is something really happening? Well, hello? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm hearing that was the weirdest experience of my life up until now. All right, I'm gonna move on. I just heard a voice and I was just like, oh my God. And it was my voice. And I was just like, what is that sound? But it's the YouTube playing on the other side all late, but that's okay. It's all good. All right. So yeah, so the absence of desire is the other thing we highly fear, because like life is about experience. And if we're not feeling anything to want, then we're not feeling anything, period. And that just, we know that there's something inherently, even though we might have put ourselves in that place because we're trying to feel safe and all that kind of thing, it's an obvious sign that something's wrong, right? And so we're afraid of that too, right? So how do we get out of it? Oh, let's talk about the repressive and the reactive side of it. I'm gonna move this. I don't know why I decided to do that right now. But the repressive side is over serious. So this is about um, if you think about kind of how we have decided to restrict our desires, either personally or through society or through religion, right? So we create laws to restrict or people enacting desire. Um, and obviously that's part of, to protect others. And and if we are not dealing with the desire at all and only restricting or repressing it, it's what causes the dying inner light, that meh feeling, right? So that's that feeling of I just don't care. I don't want to do anything anymore ever again. And then the flippant is the reactive side of this shadow. Okay. So flippant is what I'm being a lot today. Slightly irreverent, right? And that is the other side of it. If we don't care about or disregard the needs of society, when we just, indulge in our desires in every which way, we are being consumed by that, and then destroying the lives of others or destroying our own lives by seeking and fulfilling them, right? That is irreverent, or flippant is the way that Richard Rudd describes it. But to me, it sounds like irreverence, right? And and there's like, obviously both of those are in the shadow section, because they're, just because, it doesn't mean, you know, to restrict your desires, so never have them. And it doesn't mean fulfill all your desires in, without inhibition. It means like, what is the gift? What is that lifting outward from that, the evolution? What does that allow us, and what does that require? Well, the requirement is surrender. We have to just understand having desires, wanting our desires to be fulfilled, is part of being human. And if we ignore it too long, we can cause a problem. And if we fulfill them all, then we can cause a problem, right? So, and when we just accept that it is something that is happening, we allow them to happen, but we are feeling and sensing them, then that's this act of surrender. The nature of that fire on fire that Richard Rudd was referring to, in that clinging fire, is this idea that it clings to the things that it consumes, right? Fire clings to what it consumes. So it kind of is this sticky feeling of this, we're in this together, right? But it is that nature of, like, if we hold them close, then that is the nature of it, and therefore what it's meant for. You hold your desires close, but you don't necessarily have to spew them on others. And we could say this for most emotions, right? And desire is not really an emotion, it just is. The difference to me is emotion is a movement. You've heard of the definition of energy as of emotion as energy in motion, which is one of my favorite definitions, which it is. It's a Emotion is a defining reality of being a spirit in a human body, but it is also the result. The human, like, emotions are the result of a happening, whether that's internal or external. And so it's not necessarily, like, desire is not necessarily an emotion, right? Because it's not a result, it is an emanation. It's fire, right? It's the beginning of something. And so it just is. And that's why you kind of just have to accept that it is. It's just, you don't get to deny it, you don't get to feel it all the time. You just get to accept that it's happening. And that's the surrender. And so in the gift, the power of this is that the desires become their own mystery, right? Like, why we're having them, what's going on, and what is have what, because part of your desires are kind of make up who you are. They kind of make up like what you decide to do in your life, and what you pursue, what you don't pursue, who you are being, right? So it kind of is this unfolding of who you really are. And when we decide to sit with that, then we're being with ourselves and understanding ourselves at a whole new level. The programming partner in this key is 29, and that key's shadow is half-heartedness. That the shadows always like to, they reflect each other, they're mirroring each other. So essentially, if we're not being with our desires go out, the light goes out, right? The dying in our light. And then we are half-hearted in the things that we do. We don't really care if it's done. We don't care if it's not done. We might say yes, we may not get it done, right? Like, those are the shadows and the repressive and reactive side of half-heartedness, right? And so when we're in that cycle, then it kind of feeds on itself. But that's why, right? That's why we just say, okay, I'm gonna be with it. I'm gonna hold it close, even if it's painful that I don't have it, or I'm not going to be able to fulfill it, because then the point is to have it. The point is to be here experiencing the thing, right? And so desires do not have to be followed, but they must be felt. And sometimes they have to be followed for the wisdom gained, but mostly the gift and that gift level, right? So in this beautiful, powerful ability, we recognize that it's a game. Because why? Because desires, as soon as you fulfill them, you'll have another one, right? There's no satiation, just like we're talking about the digestion. Um, as soon as you feel like you're full, like it's only a few minutes before you start to feel a little bit more empty, right? And that is real. It's a real reality of the human experience. So sometimes, like one of the best things that I think humans invented, I don't know who invented it, but um, is fasting, right? Because there becomes a sweetness in the being hungry and knowing that you're not going to fulfill that desire, right? I don't know. I don't know. But you get to a point where you don't really care. You care because you're hungry, but you don't care, right? There are points in which you are feeling so much lightness of being that you may not even feel hungry. You might not even notice that you're hungry, right? It's just life and liveliness. And that's why people kind of get really into fasting for long periods of time, because there's something like your body feels like it's running on a water. I don't know how to explain it, but it feels so clear and bright for some types of fasting. So, and it obviously depends on kind of your body's condition and what's going on, which is why you always consult a doctor if you're interested in that kind of thing. But but yeah, for somebody who's fully healthy without anything that they need to pay attention to overly much, it's usually that kind of experience eventually, because you might fasting also clears toxins out of the body. So in the beginning, it may not be so fun, right? So it's kind of the same thing with these holding of desires. Like in the beginning, it may not be so fun. You might be like, whose idea was this, anyways? Right? But the more that we allow that awareness to um, become emotion, by just being aware of the desire, become an emotion. We don't necessarily have to choose emotion, but it will kind of bubble back up. And that is the sense of lightness. And so one of the characteristics in the city, SIDDHI of the gene key is rapture. I mean, well, that's the name of it's rapture. That's the name of his rapture, but is laughter. Laughter is one of the things that happens a lot in the lightheartedness of this key. And I think of it as like joy, like something that bubbles up within me. I think of as joy. It's not something you have to make happen. See, to me, like, I don't know, being happy sometimes is momentary. You kind of make it happen. You can make yourself happy by smiling and jumping around, right? Like you can change the physiology and physicality of your body to make that happen. And so sorry, husband's calling. So yeah, so you have to, so when you get to this state, you kind of just laugh for no reason. So I've seen, this is one of those contexts where a lot of people that meditate often will laugh, right? They will just start laughing when they get into like kind of that happy, blissed out state. And so it's always interesting because you have the super serious people that are like, I'm trying to focus. And then you have the person that's already there, like in this state of rapture. So it is an aspect of it. It's one of those, I, when I think of keys, like sometimes they're like a slow climb. They're like moment by moment iterations of moving out into the possibility of the gift. And there are like big leaps, and I feel like this one's one of those big leaps. I mean, it's fire, right? There's a quote that I want to talk about from the book of the Gene Keys. It is, it is not that you become helpless in a victim sense, but that you realize you are beyond needing help, and then magic happens. You expand your state of consciousness and you realize it was simply your distrust all along that was making your life seem so difficult. And when you're in those states, like it does become kind of funny, like being human becomes a little funny because you just realize that you've been tying yourself in knots when the answer is like right in front of you. And that's the beauty of rapture, and that's the beauty of this gene key, is that it can come over you all of a sudden that you realize, oh, this is true. But like somebody who holds this gift as part of their design, it's really in the first part of their life, it can be kind of tormenting. And then they learn to kind of live beyond it or through it or in it, right? And then just notice where they are when in relationship to that desire. And that's really what it's for. That's what it is for, so that we can see what parts of it are about us living more of our purpose and experience, and what parts are for just the the humanity of it, so that you can know that you are a self-authored human being, right? So Karen Curry Parker, like the things that I pulled from her are, rather than a spark of energy that must be, rather than a spark, I'm this is me not actually doing a quote, but rather than a spark, it's energy that must be cultivated and tended to, right? So that's the thing, is that in the I Ching by Venerable Wen, she called, like, it's called the spark traditionally. And and I think, we think of a spark as a flash and then gone, right? Passion even as a flash and then gone. But what she's saying here is essentially that no, like a spark wants to be nurtured and must be cultivated and tended to if it's going to stay alive. And our passions, our dreams are the same way. And so the next part I pulled was exploring our commitment and our devotion to our passion, which is that programming partner for the key is that commitment and devotion. That's the gift in the city of the 29 gene key. Okay, so it is like there's a sense of like, oh, this is my spark. I'm going to commit to my spark because it's mine, and I'm going to cultivate it, my passion for this thing, what I want, what I'm here to do is really what we're talking about here. And so Karen Curry Parker talks about the challenge here is to sustain a dream without burning out, and sharing your passion, what you want, at the right time. Okay. And then optimally sustaining the dream long enough to bring it into form, to make it happen in the 3D reality, right? And to become an inspiration for others by doing so. So that is what we get to experience when we are in right relationship with our desires, right? So, contemplation that I have for you, I have a question from Karen Curry Parker here. Do I have a dream or vision that I am avoiding because I'm afraid it won't come true? That's a deep one. Take it with you into the full moon altar, right? Like and it's true. A lot of times you'll go for the one that is safer, that is more accepted by the society and or our families or our beliefs of our religious systems that aren't necessarily the truth of the spirituality, but we have bought into those things by influence, probably. So when we drop all of that, are we really on the track of what we really want, our true passion? Or are we avoiding it and replacing it with something that feels closer, more possible, more acceptable, right? So that's a question. And then our content, we got our content. Our content for the full moon Aquarius, Gene Key 30, is letting go. Wait, did I do our let goes? No, sorry, you gotta skip back. Content, content's next. the first things you got to do is let go. So this is our personal, like, if you want to do a personal mission around full moon, these are my let go ideas. Okay. The first one is to let go of the idea of a future fulfilled desire. It doesn't matter, right? This is what I think is wrong about what people believe goals are for. People believe goals are for being met and fulfilled, right? And it's not about the fulfillment. It is about the process that you take to get here. And this is why some desires are, I mean, desire is divine, and some desires are particularly divine because it's the experience that we need to live out what we are here to do on the planet, right? And so letting go of the idea that that's in the future, that you got to wait for that to happen, that something else must happen first. Because if it's in front of you, it's for you to do. And then you may have to kind of work backwards from it to be, yeah, to feel like it's close enough, right? The big dream, the big idea, but it's still right in front of you. You don't have to go anywhere else, even though we might think we do. All things will be on that path of the desire that is being held at this now moment. Okay. And then the second one is let go of a comfortable dream. So that was what I was just talking about, is the one that you replace the real dream with because you think it's more accessible and or more acceptable. And so, yeah, let it go. Let's let it go. Because probably it ain't working out right now anyway. Like that's the energy that's up for now, right? This is the full moon and it's happening this way for a reason, y'all. So something may be taking away the replacement dream as part of your full moon experience. And just let it happen. Let's go back to that point of surrender, right? If we can. And sometimes that's a step-by-step process as well. So maybe it's like you just know that you're going to let it go and that you start that process today. Remember, this is a 2-week experience, so you've got time. All right. So let go of anything not cultivating or nurturing your spark. So this is the big one. This is actually what I received. I had like I don't know, sometimes like meditation or something last week. And that's what I received. It's like something around just letting go of anything that's not that true passion. And deciding, making that commitment to nurture the real one, right? And letting it teach me a little bit about what that is as life happens, right? So those are your 3 let goes so that you have full receiving mode during the new moon, and you come back around for Virgo new moon in September, which will be about September 2nd in California time. Like I think green, what do they call it? Greenwich time. It's the 3rd. So depends on where you are in the world. So what are your content ideas? We're back to content ideas. All right, number 1, content idea. How can people have an experience of what they want now from you, right? So this is really great if you can do a freebie or if you can do a video about that will give them an experience of what it would be like to have that now experience of what you do, what your process is, or what's available for them in your work. So for me, like this one's weird. I always have a hard time because my process is experience. So I like, unless I'm physically doing it with you, like I don't know how else to give you the experience. So that is available on the channel if y'all are wondering. It's under I think it's the voice series. So it's my OMance vocal resonance method. There's 4 steps that have give us an experience of our own vibration happening in our body in conscious awareness. And so we are feeling life experience happening and flowing through us so that we can have a sense of what it means to know ourselves and be like properly oriented to what we are doing, what we want, and what is available for now. That's how I think of it. When we tap into that now present moment in this now time and space, we get this amazing bubbling up of lightness. That's how I do it. I don't know how other people do it, but that's how I do it. So number two, content idea, that would be really good. Like if you are doing any kind of freebie, any kind of, that would be a really good one for freebies. What do clients believe before they get what they want in your work? And then after, right? So what did my clients believe? It's usually some form of that they are not good enough. Most of my clients never think they're going to be a real singer. They think that they just like to sing, and it would be nice if they could sing for others, maybe sometime in the future. And then I have my true performers who are out there, they're like, and they're making songs and they're all that, but they might not be sharing them on the level they really want to. But, and it's all based on that same idea though, that my voice won't let me be a good singer, or my voice is somehow flawed, or that I'm not good enough to be one of those people that are recognized for my music, right? And so it's just one of those things before, right? And then the after is that they don't actually have to do anything, right? They don't have to do anything to be good enough. Their voice is already perfect. And so when they allow themselves to let go, surrender, and have that experience, they realize that, oh, I didn't actually have to try that hard. And actually, if I had stopped trying, I might have gotten what I wanted sooner. um, and then that's what's good about having a process, because that's a big leap if you don't have any idea how that's going to happen. So yeah, check out my voice series if you're at all interested in that. And what wait, am I saying? What am I saying? Oh, yeah, they don't have to do anything. So afterward, it's really this experience of it's okay, because like my intentions, who I be, and my love and my desire to serve and make people happy, or serve and create a safe space, or serve and create a beautiful environment, a mood that people can lose themselves in and transform and transcend within themselves, right? Like that desire is good enough. You don't have to do any better than that. That's perfect. Share your stuff. Okay. I don't care what level it is, or how much more work you need to do on it, or how, right? Like share it, because somebody can be blessed by it. All right. Number three, what are you passionate about? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I'm kidding. But that's your third content. Your third content piece is, what are you passionate about? So, yeah, I mean, hopefully you're doing the work of your passion. If, people talk about not having to, your passion not having to have anything to do with the work that you're doing or serving people with. And I believe that is true. And I believe it's efficient if your primary path is spiritual. If your primary path is spiritual, it is efficient to choose your passion to also be your work. It just is. That's my belief. Now, what is my passion? My passion is the experience of self expression. So people think voice is my passion, or teaching people how to sing is my passion, or teaching people to be dynamic on stage is my passion. My passion is when somebody can fully, in the moment, share exactly what they think, exactly who they are, and exactly the energy that needs to be felt by others through them. That is my passion. I love that junk. So that's where that is. I don't know. I feel like talking. I'm chatty today. So the programming partner, we talked about a little bit, that Leo 29, which is the half-heartedness shadow, the gifts of commitment, and the city of devotion. And we talked about how that is incorporated in just the maintenance of that spark of passion. And then the channel completion. So if you look at a human design chart, how the body graph is set up, It's from the emotion center to the root center. And in the Gene Keys, it's called daring. So it's cool. Like, so when these two keys get together and have a baby, you become daring. You become this amazing, dynamic person, dynamic individual that is recognizing the passions that are about their current unfolding experience. They're diving into them and they are creating them in real time. The shadow, I'm sorry, the key, that's the part of that other side of the channel, is 41, which is in Aquarius. And it is the shadow of fantasy, the gift of anticipation, and the city of emanation. So if you are into like, well, hopefully you're into the Gene Keys. If not, you'll be into it after this, hopefully. But the shadow here, fantasy, I have a beautiful miss client that has this shadow, and it's like I love fantasy. I love to stay in fantasy. What's wrong with fantasy? It's creating new worlds, and that is true because there's nothing wrong with the shadow of any key. There's nothing wrong with it. It's where our perception is when we're experiencing the feelings that come with shadow, which basically means the separation from what is most true, in my opinion, most true or center or more or spirit, right? Or love, however you think of that. And so fantasy in the shadow is about all you do is dream. All it is this idea in your head that you've never taken any step toward, much less thought about it actually happening in real life. You're too busy doing life, right? That's the shadow. And then the gift is magical. It's called anticipation, which is basically and that same thing that you're dreaming about. Like if you really did step out and experience that desire to have it be part of your reality in bits and pieces and parts, and you allowed it to be, in parts before it became whole, you're actually predicting like real creation in real time. It's not just a fantasy when you start working on it, right? And so that's that daring. That's that daring. So hopefully this was exciting for you guys. I did an extra long transit today. And hopefully like you were able to follow it. I feel like I'm a little bit all over the place. This full moon energy is riding me. And it's also a little foreign. I don't have either of these on the channel. So I don't recognize this as much. I don't think I've ever focused on it like this before. So that's always interesting. It's a new experience. You feel like not yourself sometimes when you're having those brushes against other energies and truths that you're like, oh, I guess that's what other people must feel like. No wonder that person likes life that way. That's my fun. That's what I love about astrology is that you get to learn that, yeah, it's not all, everybody's not experiencing everything the same way. There's a reason why they wouldn't make the choice you made, right? And there's a reason they believe what they believe. And the more that we get to see other people's points of view, the more you realize, oh, we're all in it. We're all doing our best. We're doing what we do, you know. So yeah, so that's the reading for today. If you are interested at all in working with me or in doing a reading with me, so I do like a mini reading called the Vocal Superpower reading, and I do a purpose reading, and I'll do a business alignment reading, and I'll do a marketing reading. So if you're interested in that, I will put that in the description so that you can come hang out with me and do a reading because they are pretty powerful. I love having those conversations because it really is a conversation of how this energy has worked in the experience of your life. And then we start to recognize ourselves, which is another reason why I love it, because it's about self-expression. We start recognizing our expression of our own energy. And we're just like, more of me, please, confidence, right? So, anyways, check me out. And I would love to have a conversation with you. And I will talk to you guys.